Olá, eu sou Gustavo Meirelles, vice-presidente médico da Afya. Olhar para a medicina com mais amplitude nos faz perceber o quanto ela vai além das paredes do consultório ou do hospital. Já parou para pensar no impacto do cuidado médico quando ele chega a lugares extremos? Hoje nós vamos falar sobre como o futuro da medicina pode ajudar a levar a saúde onde ela mais precisa estar, seja em regiões remotas do Brasil, em locais inóspitos do planeta ou, por que não, em Marte. O meu convidado de hoje é uma das mentes mais inquietas e visionárias da saúde global. Ele é médico, PhD em genômica, fundador do The Medical Futurist Institute e autor de livros que mapeiam o futuro da saúde. Já palestrou em diversas universidades, empresas, em todos os locais do mundo e agora, diretamente do Afya Summit, ele está aqui para um papo que atravessa fronteiras, da Terra ao espaço, sobre como a inovação médica pode romper os limites do cuidado, mesmo em cenários extremos. And now it's time to switch to English and give a warm welcome to our guest, Dr. Bertalan Meskó. Dr. Meskó, it's such a privilege to have you with us. You work at the intersection of medicine,
The pleasure is all
technology,
mine.
and
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. So it's a pleasure to have you here. You work at the intersection of medicine, technology, and the future has been shaping how we think about healthcare worldwide. So thanks again for being with us today. We have just a few questions about the future of medicine and how healthcare should get to those remote areas, either in Earth or, why not, in Mars. So the first question is regarding your background. You are known as the medical futurist. And when did you first realize that your role as a physician would go far beyond clinical practice?
I think I was 6 when I decided that I wanted to devote my life to doing research, to become a scientist. All my life, I can remember. And I went to medical school for the exact purpose that I wanted to be involved in life sciences. And I thought, how could you do research about the human body, about human life, about medicine and healthcare if you're not a physician? Of course, that's not only how it works, but I wanted to get over that stage of my life when I finished medical school and I start my PhD, that time in genomics, in clinical genomics. I was interested in learning whether it's possible just by taking a blood sample to predict if one patient will respond to a very expensive therapy or not. So they can choose patients better, they can choose treatment options better for patients. But as soon as I finished my PhD and I defended my thesis and I actually became a geneticist researcher, I felt that something was missing. And that missing point or link in my life was my geek self. All my life, I've loved technologies. I was extremely curious about technologies, about AI, digital health sensors, wearables, everything that's technology. I built my own personal computer at home. I still do that. So while doing that, I thought there was no job description what I was looking for because I wanted to be able to zoom into a very specific aspect or field of life sciences, of technological things like how AI will impact the future of radiology, but on the same day be able to zoom out and look at healthcare from a bird's eye perspective. There was no job essentially where you could do that. So I had to design or invent a new kind of profession, and that was the medical futurist about 15 years ago. And that's how I realized that I don't feel like that I'm going beyond clinical practice because clinical practice is what makes medicine possible. So I'm extremely grateful to all those healthcare professionals doing the job in practice. I think my job is vastly different from that. My job is to contribute to how healthcare professionals are thinking about the future, how empowered patients can contribute to their own care, how decision makers and government officials can make better decisions by simply forecasting trends, opportunities, and challenges better for all these stakeholders of healthcare.
That's great to know. I'm a big fan of your work and I'm a close follower of the Medical Futurist Institute. So that vision takes us straight into one of your most fascinating ideas. In your keynote, you start from a bold premise to reinvent healthcare in Earth. We need to imagine what care might look like in very remote areas, and why not Mars. So just a few days ago, NASA and Google began a new project testing an AI powered medical assistant to help astronauts not only diagnose but maybe treat conditions autonomously in space. What would such a Martian healthcare system look like, and what lessons would you have to reinvent healthcare on Earth?
So happy to see that announcement a few days ago because in 2018, I was crazy enough to publish a scientific paper about why uh, traveling to Mars will require the adoption of digital health for space programs and organizations like NASA. I literally wrote about exactly what elements of the digital health revolution we in healthcare have been witnessing would be a must have if we wanted to go to Mars because it's so far away. We cannot bring all the equipment to Mars. We cannot bring all the medications. We cannot even bring an army of healthcare professionals with us. So we need to exploit all the opportunities that we can find in digital health from provide remotely, from being able to obtain digitally, to even including and involving the patient in the decision process. So these things might sound like something out of science fiction, but this is what digital health has been going through in the last 1.5 decades. And that's why I use that narrative, I use that perspective in this keynote narrative that I will use for the Afya event. Healthcare needs a trip to Mars. We want to involve people into a new way of thinking about redesigning healthcare. So I make them the first astronauts to Mars, go through the whole experience. We travel to Mars, we start building a civilization there. And then, of course, without spoiling the story, something important will happen and we will experience something even more serious. But then we will learn a lot of things and we will be able to make a lot of conclusions about health, what kind of healthcare system we could build. We could build back on Earth that would even be able to keep an astronaut on Mars alive. So I hope that everyone will get the point that it's not about focusing on healthcare on Mars. It's a science fiction like future. It's very much about how we can build a system today that would take care of patients who live remotely, who are coming from small rural areas or villages where there might not even be enough healthcare professionals. And I know what I'm talking about because I'm from the very eastern part of my country, Hungary. I come from a small village, and in some of the neighboring villages, it's abnormal that there is no primary care professional, for example, for years, if not a decade. So being able to use digital means, remote care, digital health apps, technologies, sensors, wearables, and the general idea that nurses and patients should play the same role as physicians in the medical team, that's not something new. But I found that using the Mars narrative helps introduce this idea to people who might not have come across this so far.
Yeah, that's an important point. Many times we think about very remote areas like Mars, but we do forget that on Earth we have really remote places like you just mentioned in Hungary, a small village, or here in Brazil, a huge country with hundreds or sometimes millions of people with no access to healthcare. So, Afya, as the biggest hub for education and technology in healthcare in Brazil, has been taking medical students and physicians to serve in very remote and underserved regions. So, for example, we do have some medical schools in the Amazon region, in places where you need to take some boats to get to those populations, and they didn't have any access to healthcare before. So, what lessons can space medicine offer about delivering high quality care for those rural or very remote populations in contexts of scarcity and also vulnerability?
Absolutely. I think the biggest lesson we all have to learn is that healthcare faces a very basic mathematical problem. According to the WHO, the World Health Organization, right now about 5 million healthcare workers, not just physicians, but even nurses, are missing from care worldwide. And they estimate that by 2030, it's going to be about 10 million healthcare workers missing. At the same time, as you mentioned, the number of patients requiring medical help will keep on increasing because not because we are getting sicker, but because we are getting better at diagnosing patients and caring for them on the long term, we have more and more technologies at our disposal to care for them, even remotely. That's a basic mathematical problem. We train as many healthcare professionals as we need, but the number of patients requiring help from medical professionals will keep on increasing. And I think we all have to realize at this point that, of course, it would always be better for a physician, for a nurse, for a healthcare professional to care for a patient in person, to be able to, be at their disposal whenever it's needed. But because of this basic mathematical problem, we have to conclude that it's physically impossible. So only technologies can fill in that gap. But we can also agree, I think, and I don't want to talk in the name of everyone else out there, but I think we can also agree that the solution doesn't lie in just simply replacing care with advanced technologies like artificial intelligence or generative AI based chatbots answering all the questions coming from patients. That's not the solution. We need to keep on having and keeping the personal touch, the physical human relationships between healthcare professionals and patients, but all those logistical gaps will have to be filled in by using a range of advanced technologies. So what we really have to prepare the healthcare workforce for right now is how to benefit from using these technologies while also learning how not to lose the human touch. And that's what I will try to address too in my upcoming keynote.
Oh, that's a very important point again. We need to learn technology, but more and more, we need to learn how to become more human and to get in touch with those patients. So you mentioned your hometown in Hungary, a small city without an excellent healthcare at that time. And again, in Brazil, this is a very common situation. And I do see that primary care can do have a very huge impact for the future of healthcare. So we are seeing in Brazil a strong expansion of primary care and also family medicine. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about how digital technologies could strengthen this model and also enable closer and more continuous care, even at a distance.
Of course, at least through three ways. One way is about how primary care physicians could act as the guides for their patients while they are going through navigating through a jungle of information. Primary care physicians that's why they are called primary care physicians. They are the first gates in the healthcare system that patients will meet. If patients have questions about technologies or data or the sensors they are using, ask those questions in the first place to their primary care physicians, and they have to be able to answer at least some of those questions to keep on building that relationship. I have such a relationship with my own primary care physician, and many times she said, look, I can't answer your question, your technological question, but come sit next to me. Let's do a search online and let's find out together. That's the mindset I think we need from primary care physicians to solve that guiding issue for patients. The second way is how the use of advanced technologies can sort of solve the healthcare professional shortage challenge. For example, in rural parts of Hungary, we have seen examples about that one nurse or a trained, not even physician, any kind of other healthcare professional could use, I can list you like 10 basic technologies, portable diagnostic devices, wearable sensors, with which they can obtain enough medical data, clinical data about the patient in a rural location that someone from afar, a healthcare professional, a physician, can decide whether that patient has to be admitted to hospital or not. So it's not that the patients have to travel a lot just to find out if that was a good decision in the first place or not. But for example, the nurses using those advanced technologies can do that job for them. And that's why we are with one of my PhD students, we are working on a study about the advanced medical black bag of the future. Because I can put almost the same technologies, nice technologies into a medical black bag today, and I can measure 10 times more data about the patient, even without being a physician by training. I am one, but a nurse could do the same kind of job. And the third aspect here, I think, is how you mentioned family medicine and the importance of primary care is a new emerging medical specialty called lifestyle medicine. I think it's incredible that some healthcare professionals found a new emerging like aspect of primary care longevity research, family medicine, and even prevention all together. So lifestyle medicine professionals, physicians, are physicians who are usually based in primary care, but they can focus more on the prevention side of a patient's story. So usually patients approach them before having any major symptoms or diagnosis to deal with, but they want to contribute to their own longevity and they don't know how. They want to essentially contribute to their own prevention or catching diseases as early as possible, but they don't know how. And thus, lifestyle medicine professionals become these guiding systems through the, I think, the vast jungle of healthcare decisions, lifestyle choices, and even medical data. So they act like a concierge service in a hotel, but they're more about, look, based on your lifestyle choices, on your health status right now, your decisions every day, and your medical family history. Here are the things, the screening, preventive measures you could take, you could do right now to make sure that we will try to catch diseases as early as possible or outright prevent them from happening. So I think lifestyle medicine is one of the most exciting medical specialties these days.
Excellent. And well, of course, with technology advancing so fast, not everyone is feeling comfortable with that. So I remember as a radiologist, my specialty has been probably one of the first to be deeply touched by AI and other innovations. So I had many colleagues who were very afraid of being replaced by AI as radiologists. We also did a study and also a medical publication some years ago at the Federal University of São Paulo with fourth year medical students, and none of them were willing to go to radiology, which, some years ago was the first one and a very hard specialty to get in, as many medical students were willing to apply for radiology. So after AI, we also see medical students here in Brazil willing to go to healthcare innovation or entrepreneurship. So, what would you say to a medical student who fears being replaced by the new technologies, specifically artificial intelligence?
I would tell them, and I had to tell them because I teach at two medical schools about the use of advanced technologies. I always tell medical students that it's understandable that you have this fear of getting replaced in your future professions, which now you decide to devote a decade of your life and then AI will replace you a decade later. That's not going to happen. The way I see this, and I have analyzed the 20 most popular medical specialties based on two aspects. One was about how creative versus repetitive tasks that medical specialty entails. And the other axis was more about how interaction based with patients versus how data based that medical specialty is. Based on that, of course, a few specialties stand out: radiology, oncology, ophthalmology, and dermatology will be the prime examples. But radiology is the absolute winner, as you mentioned, in the AI revolution. If all the FDA approved, the United States regulatory body, which is, I think, the world's most forward-looking regulatory body. If you look at the FDA approved AI-based medical technologies list, then now we can find about 80%, more than 80% of those, all the individual technologies in radiology. So if I had to tell someone, and I should count actually how many messages I get on LinkedIn and on all these social media channels from upcoming radiologists or who want to or are thinking about becoming radiologists later on, then I would have a great graph of these, more and more questions coming about this subject. I always tell them that radiology is going to be different, but for a reason. If you are a radiologist in 25 or 1995, to go through 50 scans a day, that's not healthy. You cannot, no matter how amazing person you are, you cannot make decisions with the same efficiency after the 46th scan that day. But there should be like 5 scans that really require your human attention, your expertise, your amazing understanding, your intuition, your creativity, your judgment. But everything else should be taken care of by automation. So what I tell students who are thinking about going into radiology and have the fear that you've described is that going to radiology, that's going to be one of the most exciting medical specialties, but you can only do that specialty if you are becoming at dealing with AI. Telling them to learn how to code, I don't think that's for medical professionals in general, because it takes another decade of your life to learn how to code AI. While learning how to become a good physician is should be good enough, like a career choice. But I tell them that you have to have a general understanding about, to have a common language with AI developers, because part of your job will be about further improving AI based radiology algorithms. And that's going to be exciting because your human expertise will still be needed. The AI will flag those cases that you will have to check out yourself manually. So you have to have all the knowledge, all the wisdom that radiologists used to have 5, 10, 20 years ago. But part of your job will be about further improving AI in your very specific field of interest. And I still look at it as a creative opportunity rather than a threat that will take away the job of radiologist. There is a difference, there is a scale of how differently AI will impact certain specialties. Each of them will be impacted. Even psychiatry, which is very much interaction based and it's full of creative components of tasks. All of these specialties will be impacted, but scale is going to be different. And radiology is clearly the winner already of the whole AI revolution.
Well, we usually underestimate what's going to happen we usually overestimate what is going to happen in the next year and underestimate what's going to happen in the next 10 years. And then as a medical futurist, when you look at the future, what do you think is going to be the biggest game changer for healthcare? Something that, maybe after 10 or 15 years, we look at the past and say, wow, this is when everything changed in healthcare.
Now you poke the monster here.
Yeah.
As a futurist, I always have to describe that multiple futures exist, because I know that in almost every language, the future is a singular term, the future. There's only one. And my job as a futurist should be that I have to tell you what is going to happen and exactly when on that singular timeline. But while in fact, multiple futures exist because we have a direct impact on those futures, on which future we will achieve, even more, which future we want to achieve and reach later on. So the one thing I like to highlight, and it's not going to be a technology, I could say AI stands out and all this, but the one aspect of healthcare that I think has been dominating healthcare for the last couple of years and will keep on dominating in the near future is patient empowerment. I know it doesn't sound like something extremely attractive and exciting, but hear me out because it is. For 2000 years, since the very dawn of medicine, since Hippocrates came up with its first rules and guidelines, medicine has been something only for the wisest of the community, the tribe, the group, the nation. The healthcare professionals, they know everything about the human body, about clinical jobs and the pathology, and they will be the ones making decisions for patients. They will tell patients what to do, they will prescribe medications and treatments for them. But if you check, in fact, compliance worldwide is 50%. I don't think there is an industry that has a worse efficiency rate than healthcare. So what's far the most exciting thing for me is that in the last, let's say, 2 decades, patient empowerment arrived to the ivory tower of medicine and started breaking down the walls of that tower. Essentially, now a patient can access the same studies, knowledge, medical information, second opinion, peer support that only a medical professional could access within the ivory tower of medicine. And it means so many things for the near future. It means that the medical team has been reorganized and patients sit at the same table where only physicians have been sitting for centuries, if not millennia. It means patients can now contribute to the table with insights, medical data, the things that they measure about themselves, their lifestyle decisions, even the structured, like plans and strategies they get from ChatGPT like tools, but they can all bring that to the table. It means that patients have just become the resourceful stakeholders in healthcare, why they have been the most underused resources of this profession. It means that they started generating vast amounts of data in an unprecedented way. I mean, patients, used to own the same data, but they had no interfaces to access them. But now, because of the wearable revolution, smartwatches, wearable sensors, portable diagnostic devices, now with the advanced analysis that they get from generative AI, they can finally obtain and even deal with the data they get. But I guarantee you that patients feel lost and doomed in that amount of data when they have to handle it. And that's why we need a new kind of medical team in which trained medical professionals work with empowered patients, and AI as a technological entity is becoming the newest member of that medical team. I think that new medical team is far the most exciting thing that I think the vast majority of all of us will experience, if not have experienced already in the coming years or so.
Oh, I totally agree. And well, to be ready for those changes, doctors will also need new skills. And then as a professor, you can see that medical education worldwide is still largely based on, you know, methods from the last century. And healthcare is being reinvented, but medical education also needs to be reinvented. So, what skills do you think a doctor of the future should start developing today?
It feels like you know my favorite topics by heart. I've been teaching at medical schools for over a decade. I've been bringing in knowledge about such advanced technologies into the medical curricula for over a decade. So that topic is very close to my heart because I feel for medical students that they have to get ready for a word they cannot even comprehend or understand, especially by the time they start practicing medicine. The word in which they have to practice medicine is going to be different from what they are prepared and trained for. But there are a few basic things and skills I think we can all agree as medical educators and start bringing into the medical curricula, if not already. I checked and there are hundreds of courses already worldwide in medical schools about AI and digital health. The basic skills would entail the first and far the most important one for me is called prompt engineering. I even published a paper about why it's the most important emerging skill of the medical profession right now, because prompt engineering is the ability to find the most efficient text-based prompts or briefs for large language models like ChatGPT, essentially being asked the right questions to get the most efficient response you can deal with. Prompt engineering is crucial because it helps physicians work in a better way. It helps researchers do a better job, and patients will reach out to it because decade ago we were arguing about patients using Dr. Google. Now they use Dr. AI. It will keep on going on, whether we like it or not. So we have to get ready when patients arrive to the next meeting with questions prepared by GPT-like tools. But prompt engineering is like is the open door towards huge scale of our range of opportunities for physicians to be able to work more efficiently. The second is more like a group of skills, the soft skills we talk a lot about, but it's not so easy to teach those skills when the whole medical curriculum is centered around medical knowledge. We have to teach these students everything there is to know about pathology, about certain medical specialties, about genetics and lifestyle medicine and all these. But how do you teach properly soft skills like communication or how to build empathy with patients? Essentially, of course, there have been subjects, communication is a subject in every medical school and it has been one for decades. But how do you teach how a student can build empathy with a patient when they only have remote presence? They can only come across each other. They can only have meetings virtually because the patient lives in a rural area. How do you provide like compassion and empathy when you can only see someone on a two-dimensional screen? That's a very new kind of challenge for medical educators. How you can build empathy when there are virtual reality-based applications now through which students can actually experience what it feels like to be a patient with Alzheimer's disease. There are apps literally for that purpose. So by putting on the VR a headset, students can go through a normal day of a patient with this or that condition. That's an extraordinarily, you know, innovative way of teaching students empathy. So while we know what kind of soft skills and technological skills we should teach, I think we all, by we I mean all the educators in the world in medical schools, are learning on the go how to do that properly. Because if I want to teach a medical student, a group of students, a very specific technological skill, what at the time they start practicing medicine, that skill will be outdated because an AI will be automate that task. So that's why, as a third and last point, instead of teaching technological skills, I think we have to teach mindset about dealing with technologies. That I don't want you to learn how to use this particular app or program or AI based service, but I want to teach you methods, patterns, ways of thinking. So then, whatever app or program or AI based service you will come across as a physician later on, you will have your own ways of dealing with that. I would stop at these three, but I think if you can just bring these three sets of skills into action, into practice, then every medical student will benefit from it.
And you were referring to the future as not just one future, but different futures. So let's say we do succeed in reinventing medical education and also healthcare. And I'd like to know what would be the greatest reward if we do succeed. And thinking the other way around, let's say we fail, what is the greatest risk if we can't reinvent medical education and healthcare?
Both are such thoughtful questions that it's not going to be easy to answer them, but I will try. About the first one, and I will tell you only the end story of the whole, I think, opportunity that lies in digital health and AI. And I think if we do this, if we make the right decisions and if we adopt these technologies and we learn how to work with the empowered patients and all that in the right way, then the end of this story is that an average patient will not have to dedicate decades of their lives to dealing with medical conditions. I know it might sound like something very, optimistic and romantic, but let's think about that. An average patient has to spend a lot of time, effort, money, privacy, have to make, I think, thousands of lifestyle decisions day by day, even with minor conditions, not even talking about cancer or diabetes or, long-term chronic conditions. But what if just by automating repetitive tasks, what if by making prevention get to a new level and be much more timely about using data to prevent diseases from happening? What if with all that, what we want to achieve actually is that you can live your life to the fullest. You can do whatever makes you happy in your job, career, life, family, whatever you have in mind. But dealing with your health, I have to be more specific. Dealing with the disease will not play a major role in your life. Dealing with your health will. That's something I think it's inevitable. We have to dedicate a lot of efforts into our health, but there's a difference between spending time, effort, money, privacy on our health and preserving our health than dealing with the condition already. So that's the end story of that. And the biggest risk is that we will keep medicine and healthcare as they are, which is in power of medicine, professionals tell patients what to do, and like half of them will do what they are asked to do, and half of them will not. We'll keep on just running after prevention. What I mean by this is that we'll keep on diagnosing conditions when it's late or it's not ideal, but we will keep on being bad at preventing things from happening. um, that's the biggest, I think, missed opportunity. But with these advanced technologies and the right mindset from all the decision makers in healthcare, we could make it such a seamlessly working system, healthcare, such a system that's just working on its own, almost in an automatic way. It's full of the human touch. It's full of human relationships, but every repetitive part of it, every database component has been automated. And what's left is the precious time and dedication and efforts that physicians, professionals can bring to the table. Patients can bring their insights. AI is bringing its own insights. And we have this amazingly efficiently working healthcare or medical team that can make sure that we live life to the fullest. And living to 100 years is not something like a few of us can have as a dream, but it's an absolutely achievable goal if someone is willing to dedicate efforts, time, attention, privacy into dealing with their health rather than a disease. I think that would be the biggest missed opportunity.
Oh, great. And then finally, if you could leave a last message for the next generation of Brazilian doctors who may never set foot on Mars but will reinvent healthcare here on Earth, what would that message be?
There's a reason why in my first minutes of my keynote, I announced that the attendees are the first astronauts to Mars. I want them to feel that they are the ones making decisions here. They are not just passengers. They are amazing people who have been chosen as an amazing astronaut to go to Mars and build a human civilization there to make us multi-planetary species. So the message I would like to leave for doctors and aspiring doctors and healthcare professionals in Brazil is that you have a direct impact on what kind of healthcare system your country will have. And based on the example that you set, other countries might follow. So it's not that you should not accept that you are just part of a system that has been going on for centuries, and if that part of the system you don't like works that way, let's just keep it going because it has been like that for centuries, if not millennia. Let's forget all about that. The mindset that you have, the way you want to care for patients, all this you can have a direct impact on how we redesign healthcare. And that direct impact is the one that defines which future we want to get closer to. And I cannot imagine a more optimistic way of thinking about the future than that we will be the ones designing that for ourselves.
Well, Bertalan, thank you very much again for sharing your insights with us. It's been truly inspiring to hear vision and to follow the Medical Futurist Institute about the future of medicine. So it was a pleasure to host you today for this podcast and also for Afya Summit. So thanks again.
The pleasure was all mine. Obrigado. Thank you very much. It was great to have this great discussion with you. Very thoughtful questions. And I cannot wait for the event too. So let's see you there.
Thank you. So I'll just thank you again, Bertalan. I'll just close here the podcast with a few words in Portuguese, but
Of course.
please feel free to leave now as we are approaching the last minutes of our presentation. So it was a pleasure to talk to you. I hope to see you in the future in person here in Brazil or in other parts of the world. So let's keep in touch. I can send you a message later on in LinkedIn with my personal information, and then we can exchange some ideas about the future of medicine in healthcare.
Please do that. And thank you so much for having me. Let's keep on touch and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. See you. Bye bye. Foi uma conversa que certamente amplia horizontes e provoca reflexões importantes sobre o papel da saúde no futuro e agora. O futuro já chegou, isso é um fato, e agora a discussão é outra. É pensarmos sobre as infinitas possibilidades que temos à frente, independente de onde atuemos, e sobre como a ciência, apoiada em dados e fatos, pode nos ajudar a reinventar a saúde com novos desafios. O que parecia ficção científica há alguns anos, hoje já é realidade. E a pergunta é, qual papel você quer ocupar neste novo cenário? A Afya acredita na ciência e fomenta o aprendizado contínuo e a geração de conhecimento por meio da educação médica. Acesso a conteúdo de qualidade, sempre atualizado, é parte do nosso compromisso com a saúde. Por isso, o Afya Summit deste ano teve a honra de contar com a participação do Dr. Bertalan Meskó. Muito obrigado a você que nos acompanhou até aqui. Não deixe de nos seguir e conferir mais sobre conteúdo de qualidade nos canais oficiais da Afya. Siga @afya.oficial no Instagram e no YouTube. Muito obrigado e até o próximo episódio.